The magnificent rodeo stallion's leg shattered with a sickening crack that silenced thousands, its agonized scream igniting something primal and unstoppable in Elena's chest. As the owner coldly ordered euthanasia for his now worthless investment, the vacationing veterinarian felt her entire future realign around one absolute certainty: she would not let this animal die. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The thunderous applause of the crowd filled the arena as Thunderbolt charged through the gates. His muscular chestnut body gleamed under the bright lights, each movement a testament to his raw power and grace. The 8-second buzzer seemed like an eternity as the magnificent stallion bucked and twisted with fierce determination, his rider clinging desperately to the saddle. For 5 years, Thunderbolt had been the crown jewel of Blackwood Ranch, the undefeated champion bronco that had made his owner, Maxwell Blackwood, a fortune and a reputation in the rodeo circuit. Maxwell watched from the sidelines, his weathered face betraying no emotion as the crowd roared with each violent buck. His cold blue eyes followed every movement, calculating the value that each successful performance added to his prized possession. To Maxwell, Thunderbolt wasn't just a horse, he was an investment, a machine that printed money with every show. The animal's spirit and power meant nothing beyond the dollars they generated. "That horse is worth more than most people's homes," a voice commented beside Maxwell. He turned to see Roger, another ranch owner who had always envied Maxwell's success. "And he earns his keep," Maxwell replied with a smirk. "Best decision I ever made was buying him from that failing farm in Kentucky." They had no idea what they were sitting on. The buzzer finally sounded, and the crowd erupted as another rider had failed to stay mounted on Thunderbolt for the full 8 seconds. Maxwell nodded with satisfaction as his ranch hands guided the stallion toward the exit gate. The horse's nostrils flared, his breathing heavy but controlled, his eyes still wild with the adrenaline of the performance. "One more ride today, then we're heading to Tulsa for the championship next weekend," Maxwell announced to his foreman, Jake, who nodded obediently. No one questioned Maxwell's decisions, especially when it came to pushing his animals to their limits. The prize money in Tulsa would be substantial, and Maxwell wasn't about to miss that opportunity, regardless of how many shows Thunderbolt had already performed in the past month. Little did anyone know that fate had different plans for Thunderbolt that day. As the final rider of the event mounted Thunderbolt, something felt different. The stallion seemed unusually tense, his muscles quivering beneath his gleaming coat. Perhaps it was fatigue from the long season, or maybe it was the extra tight cinch the rider had requested. Whatever the cause, when the gate swung open, Thunderbolt exploded from the chute with unprecedented fury. His first buck sent the rider airborne, but what happened next silenced the cheering crowd in an instant. As Thunderbolt landed, his right front leg twisted awkwardly beneath him. The sickening crack that followed echoed throughout the arena, cutting through the sudden hush like a knife. The magnificent stallion crashed to the ground, his wounded cry piercing the hearts of everyone present. Maxwell's face drained of color as he watched his prized investment writhing in pain on the arena floor. He rushed forward, pushing past the stunned rodeo clowns and concerned officials. Jake was already at Thunderbolt's side, attempting to calm the panicked animal. "Get him up," Maxwell barked, his voice tight with panic. "We need to get him up now." "Sir, I don't think," Jake began, but Maxwell cut him off. "I don't pay you to think. Get my horse up before this gets worse." The fear in Maxwell's voice had nothing to do with concern for Thunderbolt's suffering. All he could see were dollar signs evaporating before his eyes. The stallion that had been worth a small fortune that morning might now be worth nothing more than the cost of putting him down. The rodeo veterinarian arrived quickly, his expression grim as he examined Thunderbolt's leg. The stallion had stopped thrashing, lying on his side with his breathing labored, eyes wide with fear and pain. The vet shook his head slowly as he rose to his feet and turned to face Maxwell. "It's a severe fracture, Mr. Blackwood. The tibia is completely broken, and there's likely ligament damage as well." Maxwell's jaw tightened. "Can you set it? Get him walking again?" The vet hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Mr. Blackwood, with an injury this severe in a horse of his size and age, the humane option would be euthanasia. I'm sorry, but—" "Absolutely not," Maxwell snapped, his voice cutting through the vet's explanation. "That horse is worth too much to just put down. There must be something else we can do. Sir, you need to understand. Even if we attempt treatment, he'll never perform again. He'll likely never even be sound enough to breed. The cost of surgery and rehabilitation would be substantial, with very little chance of meaningful recovery." Maxwell turned away, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The calculations were already running through his mind. Without the ability to perform or breed, Thunderbolt was nothing but a financial burden. Insurance would cover some of the loss, but only if he followed the vet's recommendation. "Fine," he muttered after a long pause. "Do what you have to do, but not here. Get him to the trailer first. I don't want this spectacle in front of everyone." The vet nodded, though his expression showed he understood what Maxwell was really asking. It wasn't about sparing the audience from witnessing a sad event. It was about Maxwell saving face. They sedated Thunderbolt enough to move him, and with great effort, the ranch hands managed to get the injured stallion into the trailer. Unknown to Maxwell, among the crowd that day was Dr. Elena Ramirez, a veterinary surgeon specializing in equine orthopedics. She had been attending the rodeo while on vacation, a rare break from her demanding schedule at one of the country's top equine hospitals. Elena had watched the entire incident unfold, her professional instincts immediately assessing the severity of the injury even from her seat in the stands. As the crowd began to disperse, murmuring about the tragic turn of events, Elena made her way toward the trailers. Something about the owner's reaction had troubled her deeply. She had seen that look before, the cold calculation of a man who viewed animals solely as commodities. It was a look that had driven her to become a veterinarian in the first place, a desire to help creatures that couldn't speak for themselves. Elena approached the trailer just as Jake was closing the back gate. Thunderbolt's sedated form was visible inside, his magnificent body now helpless and vulnerable. "Excuse me," Elena called out, hurrying toward them. "I'm Dr. Elena Ramirez, equine orthopedic surgeon from Brightwood Equine Hospital. I saw what happened in there. I might be able to help." Jake looked at her uncertainly, then glanced toward Maxwell, who was engaged in a heated phone conversation nearby. "Ma'am, I appreciate the offer, but Mr. Blackwood has already made his decision about Thunderbolt." Elena's heart sank as she read between the lines. "And what decision is that?" Jake lowered his voice. "The most humane one, according to our vet. There's nothing that can be done for a break that bad." "That's not necessarily true," Elena insisted, her voice gaining urgency. "There have been significant advancements in equine orthopedics. I've personally performed surgeries on injuries similar to this with positive outcomes." Maxwell, having finished his call, approached with a scowl. "Who is this?" he demanded of Jake. "Dr. Ramirez, sir. She's a veterinary surgeon. Says she might be able to help Thunderbolt." Maxwell's eyes narrowed as he assessed Elena. "Unless you can make him perform again, doctor, there's nothing to discuss. I've made my decision." Elena straightened her posture, meeting his cold gaze with determination. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand this is a difficult situation, but I believe Thunderbolt deserves a chance. The break I witnessed could potentially be repaired with surgery and proper rehabilitation." "At what cost?" Maxwell scoffed. "And for what purpose? A horse that can't perform or breed is just an expensive pet." "Every life has value beyond its utility," Elena replied firmly. And who's to say he couldn't have a future as a breeding stallion after recovery? His bloodline and temperament would still be valuable. Maxwell laughed dismissively, but Elena could see a flicker of interest in his eyes at the mention of breeding potential. She pressed on, knowing she had mere seconds to make her case before he shut her down completely. "Let me examine him properly," she proposed, her voice calm but insistent. "No obligation. If I confirm there's no hope, I'll walk away. But if there's a chance, wouldn't you want to know before making an irreversible decision?" Maxwell studied her for a long moment, sizing her up with the same calculating gaze he used when appraising horses. "And what would you get out of this, doctor? Surely you're not offering your services for free." Elena maintained her composure, though his cynicism stung. "I'm on vacation. Consider this professional curiosity. If surgery is viable, we can discuss arrangements then." After what seemed like an eternity, Maxwell gave a curt nod. "Fine, take a look, but don't waste my time." Relief washed over Elena as Jake lowered the trailer ramp again. She climbed inside, her heart aching at the sight of the magnificent stallion lying sedated on the floor. Even in this state, Thunderbolt's powerful presence was undeniable. His coat, damp with sweat from pain and exertion, still gleamed in the dim light of the trailer. Elena knelt beside him, running her experienced hands gently over his injured leg. The break was bad, no question about it. But as she carefully assessed the damage, she became increasingly convinced that with the right surgical intervention and rehabilitation protocol, Thunderbolt could have a good quality of life even if he never competed again. "Well?" Maxwell demanded from the trailer entrance, his impatience palpable. Elena rose and faced him. "The fracture is severe but clean. With surgical fixation using a locking compression plate system, followed by proper rehabilitation, he has a good chance of recovery. Not for competition, but he could live comfortably and potentially even serve as a breeding stallion." "And the cost?" Maxwell asked immediately. "The surgery alone would be around $20,000. Rehabilitation would add significantly more over time." Maxwell's expression hardened. "That's ridiculous. Insurance will pay me $30,000 if I put him down today. The math doesn't add up, doctor." Elena felt a surge of anger but kept her voice steady. "Is everything just numbers to you, Mr. Blackwood? This animal has given you years of service and profit. Doesn't he deserve better than being discarded the moment he's injured?" "This is business, not a charity," Maxwell replied coldly. "I appreciate your assessment, but I've made my decision." Elena knew she was losing ground. In desperation, she made an offer that surprised even herself. "What if I took him? I could perform the surgery at cost through my hospital's research program. You'd be relieved of the financial burden, and he'd have a chance at life." Maxwell raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting this turn. "You want to buy my injured horse?" "Consider it a donation," Elena suggested. "A tax write-off for your business. Better than nothing, isn't it?" Jake, who had been silently witnessing the exchange, stepped forward. "Sir, if I may, the insurance company might investigate if they suspect we knew about a viable treatment option. Dr. Ramirez here is a witness now." This gave Maxwell pause. Insurance fraud wasn't something he wanted to risk, especially with his reputation in the rodeo circuit. He glanced at Thunderbolt, then back at Elena. "Fine," he finally said. "Draw up whatever paperwork you need. He's your problem now. But I want this handled quietly. I don't need people thinking I'm giving away valuable stock." Elena could hardly believe she'd succeeded. "I'll need to arrange transport to my facility in Colorado, and he'll need pain management immediately. Jake will help you with whatever you need," Maxwell said dismissively, already walking away. "Just get that animal out of my sight by morning." As Maxwell disappeared into the crowd, Jake turned to Elena with newfound respect in his eyes. That was something else, Doctor. I've never seen anyone change the boss's mind like that. Elena smiled weakly, the adrenaline of the confrontation beginning to fade. I couldn't just walk away, not when I knew I could help. What you're doing, it's going to cost you a fortune, isn't it? Jake asked quietly. Elena nodded, reality setting in. Yes, but some things are worth more than money. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of activity. Elena called her hospital, pulling every string she could to arrange emergency transport for Thunderbolt. Her vacation was officially over, but she couldn't bring herself to regret her impulsive decision. Meanwhile, Jake helped her stabilize Thunderbolt's leg for transport and ensure he remained comfortable. As Elena worked, she spoke softly to the sedated stallion, her hands gentle on his powerful neck. You're going to be okay, boy. Your fighting days are over, but I promise you've got plenty of good years ahead. The rodeo grounds gradually emptied as night fell, leaving Elena, Jake, and a few ranch hands working by the light of portable lamps. The paperwork transferring ownership was simple enough. Maxwell clearly wanted no delay in washing his hands of his now worthless investment. The transport won't arrive until morning, Elena told Jake as they finished securing Thunderbolt's leg. I'll stay with him tonight. Jake nodded, then hesitated. Doctor, there's something you should know about Thunderbolt. He's not an easy horse. Even before this, he was dangerous to handle. That's part of what made him such a good bronc. Just be careful when he comes out of sedation. Elena appreciated the warning. I understand. I've worked with difficult cases before. This one's different, Jake insisted. There's a wildness in him that Maxwell encouraged, made him a better performer, but he trailed off, then added quietly, just watch yourself. After Jake left, Elena settled in for a long night beside Thunderbolt. She monitored his vital signs regularly, administering pain medication as needed. In the quiet hours that followed, she found herself wondering what had possessed her to take on such an enormous responsibility. Her vacation fund was now depleted, and her savings would take a significant hit even with the reduced costs she could arrange through her hospital. Yet as she watched the rise and fall of Thunderbolt's powerful chest, she felt certain she'd made the right choice. There was something special about this horse, a dignity and strength that deserved a chance. In the dim light of the trailer, Elena made a promise to the sleeping stallion. You're more than just a rodeo attraction, she whispered, and I'm going to help you find out exactly what you're meant to be. Dawn broke with the arrival of the specialized equine transport Elena had arranged. Getting Thunderbolt loaded was a delicate operation, requiring careful coordination and additional sedation. The stallion was briefly conscious during the transfer, his dark eyes rolling with fear and confusion as strangers moved around him. Elena stayed by his head throughout, her voice a constant reassuring presence in his ear. Once secured in the transport, Elena took one last look around the rodeo grounds. Maxwell was nowhere to be seen. He'd made it clear he considered their transaction complete. Only Jake had come to see them off. Good luck, Doctor, he said, genuine concern in his voice. I hope it works out for both of you. Thank you for your help, Jake, Elena replied, extending her hand. I couldn't have done this without you. As the transport pulled away, Elena settled in for the long journey to Colorado. Her mind raced with surgical plans, rehabilitation protocols, and the mountain of logistical challenges ahead. She had just upended her life for a horse she barely knew, yet strangely, she felt more certain about this decision than anything she'd done in years. Beside her, Thunderbolt dozed under sedation, his future now irrevocably linked with hers. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The journey to Colorado stretched longer than Elena had anticipated. Every bump in the road made her wince, imagining Thunderbolt's pain despite the sedation. Twice they had to stop so she could check on him, ensuring the temporary splint was holding and administering additional medication. Throughout the drive, she made calls to her colleagues at Brightwood Equine Hospital, preparing them for the complex case that was literally on the way. "I need the surgical suite ready as soon as we arrive, Marcus," she told her chief surgical assistant. "We're looking at a complete tibial fracture with potential collateral damage. I'll need the full orthopedic team." "Elena, you do realize you're supposed to be on vacation for another week," Marcus replied, though she could hear him already making notes. "The board isn't going to be thrilled about you bringing in a charity case." "I'll handle the board," Elena assured him, though she wasn't entirely confident about that. "Just have everything ready. This horse deserves a chance." When they finally arrived at Brightwood late that night, Elena was exhausted but focused. The hospital staff had prepared as she'd requested, and a team was waiting to help unload Thunderbolt. As the transport doors opened, Elena was reminded of Jake's warning. Despite the sedation, Thunderbolt's eyes were alert, darting nervously between the unfamiliar faces. When two handlers approached to help move him, he lunged defensively despite his injury, nearly knocking one man over. "Easy, easy." Elena moved to his head, her voice low and steady. "I know you're scared. Everything looks and smells different. But we're here to help you." Whether it was her voice or simply exhaustion, Thunderbolt settled enough for them to move him into the hospital. The facility was state-of-the-art, designed specifically for equine patients with wide corridors and specialized equipment. Still, Elena could sense Thunderbolt's tension as they guided him toward the pre-surgical area. His nostrils flared at the antiseptic smell, and his ears flicked nervously at every sound. Dr. Harrison Walsh, the hospital director, was waiting for them with an expression that mixed concern and disapproval. A tall man with prematurely white hair and piercing green eyes, Harrison had been Elena's mentor when she first joined Brightwood. Now, he watched with arms crossed as they settled Thunderbolt in the preparation area. "This is the Rodeo horse?" he asked, examining Thunderbolt from a safe distance. "He's magnificent, I'll grant you that. But Elena, what were you thinking?" Elena had expected this. "I was thinking that he deserves better than being put down because he's no longer profitable." Harrison sighed. "Noble but potentially foolish. You know the complications with fractures like this, especially in a horse with his history and temperament. The surgery alone is high risk, not to mention the recovery and rehabilitation." "If anyone can do it, this team can," Elena replied, meeting her mentor's gaze steadily. "I'm not asking the hospital to cover the costs. I'm handling that personally." Harrison's expression softened slightly. "That's what concerns me. You're investing emotionally and financially in a case with uncertain odds." He glanced at Thunderbolt, who was watching them warily. "But I know that look in your eyes. You've already made up your mind." "I have," Elena confirmed. "We start surgery at dawn. I want him to rest as much as possible first." Through the night, Elena reviewed surgical plans and consulted with her team. X-rays confirmed what she had suspected. The fracture was severe but clean and, with the right approach, fixable. The real challenge would be Thunderbolt himself. A horse of his size and spirit would make recovery difficult, even dangerous. Many horses with similar injuries were lost not to the initial trauma but to complications during recovery when stress or movement damaged the repair. As dawn approached, Elena took a moment to sit with Thunderbolt. He was still sedated but awake, his dark eyes following her movements. "Tomorrow's going to be tough," she told him softly, stroking his neck. "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that, big guy?" Thunderbolt snorted softly, neither acceptance nor rejection. Elena smiled tiredly. At least he wasn't trying to bite her, which was progress of a sort. The surgery began at 6 a.m. sharp. Elena's team moved with practiced precision, each person knowing their role in the complex procedure. As the lead surgeon, Elena directed every step, her focus absolute as they worked to repair the shattered bone. The procedure took nearly 6 hours, longer than anticipated due to the discovery of additional damage to surrounding tissues. "Locking plate is secure," Elena announced as they completed the main fixation. "Let's close now. Careful with those sutures. I want them tight but not pulling." By early afternoon, they had done all they could. Thunderbolt was moved to recovery, his leg now immobilized in a specialized cast designed to provide support while allowing some necessary movement to prevent stiffness. Elena watched as he was settled into a padded stall equipped with a sling system that could support his weight if needed. "Now comes the hard part," Marcus said, standing beside her as they observed the sleeping stallion. "Think he has the temperament for recovery?" Elena considered the question seriously. "Honestly, I don't know, but I think there's more to him than what Maxwell Blackwood saw. We just need to help him find it." The first 24 hours after surgery were critical. Elena barely left the hospital, catching short naps in the break room between frequent checks on Thunderbolt. When he finally began to regain consciousness, his reaction was exactly what she had feared: immediate panic. Despite the pain and sedation, he struggled violently against the unfamiliar surroundings, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. Elena rushed into the stall, ignoring the warnings of the technicians. "Thunderbolt, easy boy, easy," she called, positioning herself where he could see her, but staying clear of his thrashing legs. His ears swiveled toward her voice, and for a moment, his struggles lessened. Elena continued talking, her voice the only constant in his frightening new reality. Gradually, his breathing slowed, though his muscles remained tense, ready to flee at the slightest provocation. "That's it," she encouraged, slowly moving closer. "Remember me? I'm the one who's been with you since the rodeo. You're safe here." Whether he understood her words or merely responded to her tone, Thunderbolt allowed Elena to approach. She stood beside him, gently stroking his neck and murmuring reassurances until the wild look in his eyes began to fade. Harrison observed this interaction from the doorway, his expression thoughtful. When Elena finally emerged from the stall an hour later, he was waiting. "You've got away with him," he noted. "That's something, at least. But Elena, this is just the beginning. You know what's ahead. Months of rehabilitation, complications we can't even anticipate yet." Elena nodded, too tired to argue. "I know, but did you see him just now? When he calmed down, there was recognition there, intelligence. He's not just some mindless bronc." Harrison smiled slightly. "Well, you've always been able to see things in your patients that others miss. Let's hope you're right about this one." As the days passed, Elena established a routine with Thunderbolt. She was present for every treatment, every bandage change, becoming the constant he could rely on in a world that had been completely upended. Progress was painfully slow. The physical healing of the bone was just the beginning. Teaching Thunderbolt to trust, to cooperate with his treatment, proved to be the greater challenge. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Elena mused one evening as she sat in his stall reviewing his latest x-rays. "All those years of being pushed to buck, to fight. No wonder you don't know how to just be a horse." Thunderbolt watched her with what Elena had come to recognize as his curious expression, ears forward, eyes alert but not alarmed. But she'd begun to catalog his moods, learning to read the subtle shifts in his body language that signaled fear, pain, or the rare moments of calm. 2 weeks after the surgery, Elena received news that left her momentarily speechless. She had been checking Thunderbolt's morning vitals when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Maxwell Blackwood's name, someone she never expected to hear from again. "Dr. Ramirez," she answered cautiously. "Doctor," Maxwell's voice carried its usual brusque tone. "I understand you went through with the surgery on my horse." Elena bristled at his phrasing. "Thunderbolt isn't your horse anymore, Mr. Blackwood. The transfer of ownership was finalized the night of the rodeo. Yes, about that, Maxwell continued undeterred. My attorney has been reviewing the situation, and we believe there may have been some irregularities in our agreement. What are you talking about? Elena felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. You took advantage of a stressful situation to acquire a valuable animal for nothing. Some might call that coercion. I've decided I want my horse back. I'm prepared to reimburse you for the surgical costs, of course. Elena gripped the phone tighter. That's absurd. You were going to euthanize him. I gave him a chance at life that you weren't willing to provide. That was a medical decision I was considering based on the information available at the time, Maxwell replied smoothly. Now that I understand the prognosis is more positive, naturally I want what's best for the animal. What's best for Thunderbolt is to stay right where he is, Elena said firmly. The paperwork is legally binding, Mr. Blackwood. You signed away all rights to him. Papers signed under duress can be challenged, Maxwell countered. My lawyer will be contacting you. In the meantime, I expect you to maintain excellent care of my property. The line went dead before Elena could respond. She stared at the phone in disbelief, then looked at Thunderbolt, who was watching her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand more than any horse should. Don't worry, she told him, stroking his neck. He's not taking you anywhere. But Maxwell's threat loomed over her as she went about her day. During her lunch break, she called a lawyer friend who specialized in animal law. The conversation did little to ease her mind. It's a nuisance suit, Stephanie explained, but that doesn't mean it won't be effective. He's counting on you not having the resources to fight a prolonged legal battle. So what do I do? Elena asked. Document everything. Your initial agreement, the condition Thunderbolt was in when you took him, all the care you've provided. And Elena, be prepared for this to get ugly. Men like Blackwood don't like losing. The conversation left Elena shaken, but more determined than ever to protect Thunderbolt. That evening, she sat in his stall longer than usual, going through his medical records and taking additional photos of his progress. I won't let him take you back, she promised. Not after everything you've been through. Not after how far we've come. As if sensing her distress, Thunderbolt nudged her gently with his nose, the first time he had initiated contact. Elena looked up in surprise, then smiled, rubbing the white star between his eyes. Well, look at you making friends. Maybe we're getting somewhere after all. Despite the legal cloud hanging over them, Elena pressed forward with Thunderbolt's rehabilitation. The cast had been replaced with a lighter brace, allowing for more controlled movement. It was time to begin the most challenging phase of his recovery, teaching him to bear weight on the injured leg again. This is going to be difficult, she warned Marcus as they prepared for the first session. He's still not comfortable with strangers, and he's going to be in pain. Which is why you're going to be right there with him, Marcus replied. He trusts you as much as that stallion trusts anyone. The rehabilitation area was a long, padded corridor designed for exactly this purpose. With the support sling minimizing weight on his injured leg, Thunderbolt would be encouraged to take a few steps each day, gradually rebuilding strength and confidence. Getting him to the rehab area was the first challenge. Despite weeks of handling, Thunderbolt still grew tense when moved to new environments. Elena led him slowly, speaking constantly in the calm, steady voice that had become his touchstone. Just a few more steps, big guy. We're going to take this nice and easy. For the first few minutes in the support sling, Thunderbolt stood rigidly, his eyes wide, nostrils flared in distress. Elena stood directly in front of him, her hands on either side of his face, forcing him to focus on her rather than his surroundings. I know this feels strange, but you need to trust me a little longer. Can you do that? Just one step at a time. Slowly, Painfully, Thunderbolt took his first tentative step forward. The moment his injured leg touched the ground, he flinched and tried to rear back, but the support system prevented him from putting his full weight on it. "Good boy," Elena encouraged. "That's it. Just like that." By the end of the session, Thunderbolt had managed 5 steps, a minuscule distance for a horse accustomed to charging across rodeo arenas, but a monumental achievement in his recovery. Elena rewarded him with apple slices, his newfound favorite treat, and praised him lavishly. As they settled him back in his stall, Marcus shook his head in amazement. "I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen a horse with his background adapt like this. He should be impossible to handle, especially during painful therapy." Elena smiled, watching as Thunderbolt drank deeply from his water bucket. "He's figuring out that not all humans want something from him, that some of us just want to help." Days turned into weeks, and Thunderbolt's physical progress continued to exceed expectations. The bone was healing well, and he was gradually bearing more weight on the injured leg. But equally remarkable was his psychological transformation. The horse that had arrived at Brightwood wild-eyed and dangerous was showing signs of a different nature emerging, curious, intelligent, and increasingly willing to cooperate. Not that there weren't setbacks. Some days, a sudden noise or unexpected movement would trigger his defensive instincts, and the old Thunderbolt would resurface, eyes rolling, muscles tensed for fight or flight. On those days, only Elena could calm him, her presence a reminder that he was safe, that pain wasn't the only constant in his life anymore. One morning, 6 weeks after surgery, Elena arrived at the hospital to find Harrison waiting by Thunderbolt's stall, his expression grave. "Blackwood's lawyers served the hospital with papers this morning," he informed her. "They're demanding Thunderbolt's immediate return and threatening to sue the hospital for harboring what they claim is stolen property." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "Harrison, you know that's not true. I have the signed transfer." "I know," he interrupted gently, "but the board is concerned. This kind of publicity, a legal battle, it's not what Brightwood needs right now. They're meeting this afternoon to discuss the situation." "Are they going to make me give him up?" Elena asked, her voice barely audible. Harrison hesitated. "They're going to want to know what your plan is. This was supposed to be a surgery and standard recovery. Now we're looking at months more of rehabilitation, legal fees, and a horse that may never be fully sound." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Donner, I'm on your side, Elena, but you need to convince them that this is more than just an emotional rescue." Elena nodded, her mind already racing. She had known this confrontation was coming, had been preparing for it since Maxwell's call. Now everything hinged on her ability to prove that saving Thunderbolt wasn't just the right thing to do, but the smart thing as well. "I'll be ready," she promised. "Just give me a chance to make my case." As Harrison left, Elena turned to Thunderbolt, who was watching the exchange with pricked ears. "Looks like we need to show them all what you're really made of," she told him, "and I think I know just how to do it." The boardroom at Brightwood Equine Hospital was designed to impress, all polished mahogany and leather chairs, with large windows overlooking the scenic grounds where recovered patients grazed peacefully. Today, however, Elena found the setting intimidating as she faced the 7 board members who would decide Thunderbolt's fate. She had spent the afternoon preparing, gathering medical records, recovery statistics, and a detailed plan for Thunderbolt's future. Now, standing before the board with her presentation ready, she fought to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for this opportunity," Elena began. "I understand your concerns about the legal challenge from Maxwell Blackwood and the resources being devoted to Thunderbolt's care. I'm here to show you why this case is worth fighting for, both ethically and practically." Dr. Winters, the board chair, nodded curtly. "Proceed, Dr. Ramirez, but be aware our primary concern is the hospital's reputation and financial stability. Your personal attachment to this animal, while admirable, cannot be our deciding factor. Elena took a deep breath. Of course. Which is why I'm proposing that Thunderbolt become part of our equine therapy research program. This caught their attention. The therapy program was Brightwood's newest initiative, using horses to help trauma survivors, particularly veterans and children with disabilities. It was both a charitable endeavor and a source of significant grant funding. Thunderbolt has qualities that make him uniquely suited for this work, Elena continued, advancing to a video she had recorded that morning. Despite his history as a rodeo bronc, he's showing remarkable adaptability and intelligence during his rehabilitation. The video showed Thunderbolt during his morning session. Despite his still healing leg, he was following Elena's simple commands, stepping forward, stopping, turning, all without a lead rope, responding solely to her voice and hand signals. It was basic training for most horses, but remarkable for one whose entire life had been spent being forced to buck and fight. This horse was valued only for his aggression for years, Elena explained. Yet in just 6 weeks, he's demonstrating the ability to form trust bonds and learn new behaviors. Imagine what he could accomplish with proper training as a therapy horse. Dr. Winters looked skeptical. A former rodeo bronc as a therapy animal? That seems like a liability waiting to happen, Dr. Ramirez. With respect, that's exactly what makes him valuable, Elena countered. Many of our therapy clients, especially veterans with PTSD, respond best to animals that have overcome trauma themselves. Thunderbolt's journey from rodeo performer to therapy horse would be powerful, not just symbolically, but neurologically. Studies show that animals who have experienced significant stress and successfully adapted can form unique connections with humans facing similar challenges. She advanced to her next slide, showing the preliminary results of Thunderbolt's cognitive assessments. His intelligence scores are in the top percentile of equines we've tested. Combined with his growing trust response, he has the potential to be not just a participant in our program, but a flagship case study. For the next 20 minutes, Elena methodically addressed every concern: financial implications, legal strategy, rehabilitation timeline, and training protocol. She had done her homework, consulting with the therapy program director and even securing tentative interest from a major research grant that focused on innovative approaches to equine therapy. As for Blackwood's legal challenge, she concluded, our documentation clearly shows that he intended to euthanize Thunderbolt that day. Multiple witnesses can testify that he explicitly rejected treatment options. The transfer of ownership may have been hastily arranged, but it was legal and binding. Our attorneys believe his case has little merit beyond nuisance value. When she finished, the room fell silent. Elena stood tensely, waiting as the board members exchanged glances. Finally, Dr. Winters spoke. You've clearly put considerable thought into this, Dr. Ramirez. The board will need to deliberate privately before making a decision. Elena nodded, gathering her materials. Thank you for your consideration. Whatever you decide, I hope you'll remember that this case represents everything Brightwood stands for: innovation in treatment, compassion in care, and the belief that every animal deserves a chance to fulfill its potential. As the door closed behind her, Elena released a shaky breath. She had done everything possible. Now Thunderbolt's fate rested in the board's hands. She headed straight to his stall, needing the comfort of his presence after the stress of the presentation. Thunderbolt nickered softly as she approached, another new behavior that had emerged during his recovery. 2 months ago, he had viewed humans solely as threats or obstacles. Now, at least with Elena, he showed genuine recognition and what she could only interpret as affection. "Hey, big guy," she greeted him, slipping into the stall. "I did my best in there, told them what a special horse you are." Thunderbolt nudged her shoulder gently, and Elena smiled despite her anxiety. She had promised herself she wouldn't get emotionally attached to him. He was a patient, one of dozens she treated each year. Yet somehow, this magnificent stallion had worked his way into her heart. Perhaps it was witnessing his transformation, from the terrified, aggressive animal that had arrived at Brightwood to the increasingly gentle, curious horse he was becoming. Or maybe it was the late nights she'd spent sleeping in the hospital corridor during his critical recovery period, the way he now looked to her for reassurance when faced with new challenges. Whatever the reason, Elena knew she couldn't bear to lose him now. Not to Maxwell Blackwood, who had been willing to discard Thunderbolt the moment he ceased to be profitable. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was Harrison. "The board has reached a decision," he said without preamble. "They want to see you in the rehabilitation arena with Thunderbolt." Elena's heart raced. Now? But he's already had his therapy session today. I don't want to stress his leg. Just a brief demonstration, Harrison interrupted. They want to see the two of you together, evaluate what you described in your presentation. Can you bring him down in 20 minutes? We'll be there, Elena promised, ending the call. She turned to Thunderbolt with a determined smile. Time to show them what you're made of, boy. Leading Thunderbolt to the rehabilitation arena, Elena could feel his tension through the lead rope. He sensed her anxiety, and it made him wary. The presence of the entire board, standing formally along the edge of the arena, only heightened his alertness. Easy, Elena murmured, stroking his neck. These people decide if you stay. Let's show them your best self. She unclipped the lead rope, a calculated risk, but one she was confident in taking. Thunderbolt remained beside her, ears flicking between her and the strangers observing them. Thunderbolt has been learning basic liberty work, Elena explained to the board. Working without restraint builds trust and demonstrates his cognitive abilities. With clear, calm signals, she directed Thunderbolt to walk forward, turn, and stop, simple commands that he now understood. He moved with growing confidence despite his still healing leg, responding to her voice and hand gestures with a precision that belied his rodeo background. Dr. Winters stepped forward slightly. Impressive control, Dr. Ramirez, but therapy horses need to respond to different handlers. Would he allow someone else to approach? Elena hesitated. Thunderbolt was still wary of strangers, accepting them only after careful introduction. This was an unexpected challenge. We're still working on that aspect of his training, she admitted. But perhaps Dr. Walsh could demonstrate. Thunderbolt is familiar with him. Harrison entered the arena slowly. Thunderbolt's ears pinned back slightly, but he didn't retreat as Harrison approached. Following Elena's instructions, Harrison extended his hand palm up, allowing Thunderbolt to catch his scent. After a tense moment, the stallion stretched his neck forward, nostrils flaring as he investigated this familiar but not quite trusted human. The board watched intently as Harrison gradually moved closer, eventually placing a hand gently on Thunderbolt's shoulder. The stallion remained calm, looking to Elena for reassurance but accepting the contact. This horse was considered dangerous just weeks ago, Harrison told his colleagues. What you're seeing represents remarkable progress in a very short time. Dr. Winters studied Thunderbolt thoughtfully. And the leg? What's the prognosis for full recovery? Helena approached Thunderbolt's other side, running her hand down his injured leg. The bone is healing exceptionally well. We've moved to a less restrictive brace, which allows for more natural movement while still providing support. In another month, we'll transition to therapeutic wrapping only. She paused, wanting to be completely honest. He'll likely always have some degree of limitation. We don't expect he'll ever carry a rider at full gallop or jump obstacles. But for therapy work, where controlled, gentle movement is the goal, his recovery should be more than adequate. Dr. Winters nodded, then gestured to a younger board member, Dr. Sophia Chen, who Elena knew specialized in equine behavior. Dr. Chen, your assessment? Dr. Chen stepped closer to the arena fence. I'd like to see how he responds to a mild stressor. if that's acceptable. Therapy horses often encounter unexpected stimuli. Elena tensed but nodded. What did you have in mind? Nothing dramatic, Dr. Chen assured her. Perhaps an unfamiliar object introduced to his environment? Harrison retrieved a colorful therapy ball from a nearby equipment rack, something Thunderbolt had never seen before. At Elena's signal, he rolled it slowly across the arena floor toward the stallion. Thunderbolt's reaction was immediate. His head shot up, ears forward, muscles tensing as he tracked the strange object. 2 months ago, this would have triggered a fight-or-flight response, likely resulting in a dangerous rear or bolt, despite his injury. Now, though startled, he remained in place, looking to Elena for guidance. "Good boy," she murmured, her hand steady on his neck. "It's just a ball. Nothing to worry about." To everyone's surprise, Thunderbolt lowered his head, stretching his neck toward the ball with cautious curiosity. When it stopped rolling, he took a tentative step toward it, sniffing the air. Dr. Chen smiled. "Curiosity rather than fear. That's excellent. He's showing signs of healthy neurological rewiring. The trauma response is being replaced with appropriate investigative behavior." She turned to her colleagues. "Speaking purely from a behavioral perspective, this animal is demonstrating remarkable adaptation capacity. His potential for the therapy program is significant." The tension in Elena's shoulders eased slightly. Dr. Chen's support was crucial. Her expertise in equine behavior carried substantial weight with the board. After a few more demonstrations, Dr. Winters thanked Elena and asked her to return Thunderbolt to his stall while they completed their deliberations. The waiting was excruciating, but Elena used the time to check Thunderbolt's leg, ensuring their impromptu demonstration hadn't caused any setbacks. Just as she was finishing, Harrison appeared at the stall door, his expression unreadable. "They've reached a decision." Elena's heart pounded as she followed him back to the boardroom. The formal atmosphere felt even more intimidating now that Thunderbolt's future hung in the balance. Dr. Winters didn't waste time on preliminaries. "Dr. Ramirez, the board has voted to support your continued rehabilitation of Thunderbolt with certain conditions." Relief flooded through Elena, so powerful that she had to grip the back of a chair to steady herself. "Thank you. What conditions?" "First, legal expenses related to Blackwood's challenge will be capped at an amount the hospital deems reasonable. Any costs beyond that must be covered personally." Dr. Winters held up a hand as Elena began to respond. "Second, Thunderbolt's integration into the therapy program must proceed according to a formal protocol, with regular evaluations by Dr. Chen and the therapy director. If at any point they determine he's unsuitable, alternative arrangements must be made immediately." Elena nodded. These were reasonable stipulations, ones she had anticipated and was prepared to accept. "Finally, Dr. Winters continued, we want to document this case comprehensively, not just the medical aspects, but the behavioral rehabilitation and training methodology. This could be a valuable contribution to veterinary literature, particularly in cases where high-performance animals transition to therapeutic roles." "I'd be happy to lead that documentation," Elena agreed readily. This was better than she'd hoped. Not just permission to continue Thunderbolt's treatment, but institutional support for the broader vision she had presented. As the meeting concluded, Harrison walked Elena back toward the treatment area, a satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You should be proud," he told her. "It's not often the board unanimously approves something like this. You made a compelling case." "Thunderbolt made the case," Elena replied. "I just presented the evidence." Harrison chuckled, always deflecting credit. "But seriously, Elena, what you've accomplished with that horse in such a short time is remarkable. From what I understand, most horses with his background never successfully transition to civilian life, so to speak." They're too damaged by the rodeo experience. Elena had been thinking about that very issue. I think Thunderbolt might be different because of his intelligence. He's adaptable in a way that suggests he was never fully conditioned by his rodeo training, almost like he was playing a role all those years, one that was forced on him rather than one he embraced. The thought stayed with her as she checked on Thunderbolt one last time before heading home, the first early night she'd had in weeks. With the board's approval secured, she could finally take a breath, maybe even catch up on some much-needed sleep. But as she drove home, Elena's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something prompted her to answer rather than let it go to voicemail. "Dr. Ramirez, this is Jake Wilson. We met at the rodeo when you took Thunderbolt." Elena pulled over, surprised to hear from Maxwell's foreman. "Jake, yes, I remember. Is everything all right?" There was a pause, and when Jake spoke again, his voice was lower, as if he was worried about being overheard. "I thought you should know that Mr. Blackwood isn't just filing legal papers. He's hired some men to watch your hospital. I think he might be planning to take matters into his own hands." Elena's blood ran cold. "Are you saying he would try to steal Thunderbolt?" "I'm saying that Mr. Blackwood doesn't like losing, especially not to someone he considers beneath him. And he's got connections, people who owe him favors, who wouldn't ask questions if he wanted something done quietly." Jake paused again. "Look, I shouldn't be calling you. I could lose my job. But that horse, the way you stood up for him when nobody else would, I just thought you deserved a warning." "Thank you, Jake," Elena said earnestly. "I appreciate you taking the risk." After ending the call, Elena sat in her car, mind racing. Her first instinct was to turn around, to go back to Brightwood and make sure Thunderbolt was safe. But the hospital had security, and Thunderbolt was in a secure stall in the main treatment barn. Surely Blackwood wouldn't be reckless enough to attempt breaking into a major equine hospital. But Jake's warning nagged at her. Maxwell Blackwood was wealthy and influential, accustomed to getting his way. The legal challenge might just be his opening move, a distraction while he pursued more direct methods of reclaiming what he saw as his property. Elena dialed Harrison's number. When he answered, she quickly explained Jake's call, trying not to sound paranoid but emphasizing the potential threat. Harrison took her concerns seriously. "I'll alert security to be extra vigilant, and I'll have someone check on Thunderbolt regularly through the night. We can discuss additional security measures tomorrow." "Maybe we should move him to a different stall," Elena suggested, "somewhere less obvious." "Let's not overreact," Harrison cautioned, "but I'll make sure he's protected. Try to get some rest, Elena. Tomorrow we'll develop a more comprehensive security plan." Elena agreed, but as she drove home, the knot of worry in her stomach refused to dissolve. Jake's warning had awakened a new fear, that Thunderbolt's greatest threat wasn't his injury or even the legal challenge to his ownership, but the vindictive pride of a man who viewed him as nothing more than property to be reclaimed. Elena slept fitfully that night, her dreams filled with shadowy figures stealing Thunderbolt away while she ran helplessly after them. She woke before dawn, checking her phone immediately for any messages from the hospital. Finding none, she took that as a good sign and hurried through her morning routine, eager to get back to Brightwood. The early morning air was crisp as she pulled into the hospital parking lot. Everything appeared normal. Staff arriving for the day shift, the distant whinnies of horses greeting the sunrise. Nothing to suggest any disturbance during the night. Still, Elena couldn't shake her uneasiness as she made her way to Thunderbolt's stall. Relief washed over her when she saw him standing quietly in his stall, head turning toward her as he heard her footsteps. "Morning, handsome," she greeted him, her voice betraying more emotion than she intended. Thunderbolt nickered softly in response, a sound that still surprised her each time she heard it. This horse, once known only for his aggressive bucking, was developing a gentle side that few had ever glimpsed. The night security guard, Bill, stopped by as she was checking Thunderbolt's leg. "Dr. Walsh told me to keep a special eye on this one," he said. "Checked on him every hour just like he asked, no problems at all." "Thanks, Bill. I appreciate the extra attention." "Pretty impressive animal," Bill commented, watching as Thunderbolt stood patiently for Elena's examination. "Hard to believe he was a rodeo bronc. Seems like a complete gentleman now." Elena smiled. "He's full of surprises." The security guard's presence reassured her somewhat, but Jake's warning still lingered in her mind. She needed to speak with Harrison about increasing security, at least until Blackwood's threat was neutralized. She found Harrison in his office, already reviewing the day's cases. When she explained her ongoing concerns, he nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about this since your call last night," he said. "The simplest solution would be to move Thunderbolt to our rehabilitation facility at Silver Creek. It's more remote, less known to the public, and has its own security system." Silver Creek was Brightwood's satellite facility, located about 30 miles away in a secluded valley. Originally a private ranch, it had been donated to the hospital and converted into a long-term rehabilitation center for equine patients. "That might be perfect," Elena agreed. "When could we move him?" "I can arrange transport for tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I've already spoken with security about maintaining a closer watch on the main barn." Harrison leaned back in his chair. "I've also put in a call to our attorney about Blackwood's legal maneuvers. She believes we have a strong position, but agrees that keeping Thunderbolt somewhere less accessible is prudent until this is resolved." Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Thank you, Harrison. I was worried I might be overreacting." "Better safe than sorry," he replied. "Besides, Silver Creek would be an ideal setting for the next phase of Thunderbolt's rehabilitation. More space, quieter environment. It makes sense therapeutically as well as from a security standpoint." They spent the rest of the morning planning for the move and preparing Thunderbolt's new treatment protocol. The Silver Creek facility had extensive pastures with gentle slopes, perfect for the progressive walking program Thunderbolt would need as his leg continued to heal. There was also a specialized water therapy system that would allow him to build strength without putting undue stress on the healing bone. When Elena returned to Thunderbolt's stall later that day, she brought Marcus with her to assist with another rehabilitation session. They had progressed to walking Thunderbolt outside for short periods, allowing him to experience different terrains under careful supervision. "We'll be taking a little trip tomorrow," Elena told Thunderbolt as she fitted his supportive leg wrap. "A place with more grass and fresh air. I think you'll like it." Thunderbolt's ears pricked forward at the sound of her voice, his eyes alert and curious. Elena had begun to recognize this expression, a brightness in his gaze that appeared when he was processing new information. It was moments like these that reinforced her belief in his exceptional intelligence. Their walk through the hospital grounds went smoothly. Thunderbolt moved with increasing confidence, putting more weight on his healing leg. His stride was still uneven but improving daily. Elena noted with satisfaction that he was showing less anxiety in open spaces, another sign of his psychological recovery. As they returned to the barn, Elena noticed an unfamiliar truck parked near the hospital entrance. Something about it triggered a vague unease, but she dismissed the feeling. Brightwood received visitors daily, clients, vendors, prospective patients. There was nothing unusual about an unknown vehicle. That evening, Elena stayed later than usual, finalizing preparations for Thunderbolt's transfer. She wanted everything to go smoothly, with minimal stress for him. The transport was scheduled for 7 a.m., before the hospital became busy with the day's appointments and procedures. It was nearly 10 p.m. when she finally left, with a promise to Bill that she'd return early the next morning. The night was clear and cool as she walked to her car, the parking lot illuminated by security lights that cast long shadows between the vehicles. Elena was fumbling for her keys when she heard a vehicle start somewhere in the darkness beyond the lot. Headlights suddenly blazed to life, momentarily blinding her. The truck, the same one she'd noticed earlier, pulled out from behind the maintenance building and accelerated toward the exit. Something about the driver's furtive behavior sent a chill down Elena's spine. She hurried to her own car and followed, keeping a safe distance but determined to see where the truck was headed. As they reached the main road, Elena called Bill. "Can you check on Thunderbolt right away? There's a truck leaving the property that seems suspicious." Bill promised to check immediately. Elena kept the truck in sight, following it down the winding country road that led away from Brightwood. Her phone rang less than 5 minutes later. "Dr. Ramirez, Thunderbolt is fine," Bill reported. "Calm and settled in his stall. I'll keep checking on him throughout the night." Elena exhaled in relief, feeling slightly foolish for her paranoia. The truck ahead turned onto the highway, picking up speed. After a moment's hesitation, Elena stopped following. She was overreacting, letting Jake's warning and her own anxiety cloud her judgment. She turned around and headed home, trying to shake off the lingering sense of unease. Tomorrow, Thunderbolt would be safely at Silver Creek, away from prying eyes and potential threats. One more night under Bill's watchful gaze, and then they could all breathe easier. Back at Brightwood, Bill completed his rounds as promised. Thunderbolt dozed in his stall, seemingly undisturbed by the late check. The security guard made a note in his log and continued his patrol of the grounds. He didn't notice the small device attached under the eave of the barn, blinking silently in the darkness. Nor did he spot the nearly invisible camera focused on Thunderbolt's stall, transmitting images to a receiver miles away. In a motel room on the outskirts of town, 2 men watched those images on a laptop screen. One was the driver of the truck Elena had followed, a reconnaissance mission now complete. The other, older and harder looking, studied the layout of the barn, memorizing entry points and security cameras. "Looks simple enough," the older man commented. "One night guard, basic alarm system. Nothing we haven't handled before." "What about the horse?" the driver asked. "Blackwood said it was dangerous." The older man chuckled. "It's injured, remember? Besides, we're not going to give it a chance to cause trouble. Quick in, quick out. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, we'll be halfway to Wyoming with Blackwood's property." They continued their planning, unaware that their timetable was about to be disrupted. For while Elena had stopped following the truck, her suspicions had not been entirely misplaced. The men watching Thunderbolt's stall were indeed Maxwell Blackwood's hired hands, tasked with reclaiming the valuable stallion by any means necessary. But they had made a critical miscalculation. Their plan accounted for standard security measures and hospital protocols, but not for the fierce determination of a veterinarian who had already risked everything once to save Thunderbolt, and would do so again without hesitation. Elena woke with a start at 3 a.m., pulled from sleep by a persistent sense of dread she couldn't shake. She sat up in bed, heart racing, trying to identify the source of her anxiety. Everything had been arranged for Thunderbolt's transfer. Bill was checking on him regularly. Security had been alerted to potential concerns, yet something felt wrong. She reached for her phone and called the hospital's night desk. No answer. That was unusual. Someone should always be available to respond to emergencies. She tried Bill's direct line next. Again, no answer. Alarm bells rang in Elena's mind. It might be nothing. A busy night with emergencies that pulled staff away from phones, or Bill on rounds in an area with poor reception, but her instincts screamed otherwise. Without bothering to change out of her sweatpants and t-shirt, Elena grabbed her keys and headed for her car. The drive to Brightwood, normally 20 minutes, took just 15 as she sped through empty pre-dawn streets, her thoughts racing faster than her vehicle. As she approached the hospital, Elena dimmed her headlights and parked some distance from the main entrance. If something was wrong, announcing her arrival might make matters worse. The hospital grounds appeared peaceful, the security lights casting their usual glow over the parking lot and main buildings. But the night guard's truck, which should have been parked near the security office, was nowhere in sight. Elena moved quietly toward the main barn, staying in the shadows. As she drew closer, she noticed the security door was slightly ajar, not fully open but not properly closed either. She slipped inside, straining to hear any sounds that didn't belong in the night-quiet barn. Muffled voices drifted from the direction of Thunderbolt's stall. Elena pressed herself against the wall, edging closer until she could make out what they were saying. "Hurry up with that sedative. We need him quiet for transport." The voice was unfamiliar, low and gruff. "I'm trying. He keeps moving away. Blackwood said this horse was sedated when they moved him before. Just get it done. We've got 20 minutes before the guard wakes up." Elena's blood ran cold. They had incapacitated Bill somehow, and now they were attempting to sedate Thunderbolt for removal. She needed to alert security, call the police, but her phone was in her car and she couldn't leave Thunderbolt. Looking around desperately, she spotted a fire alarm on the wall near the barn entrance. It would alert security and potentially scare off the intruders. She began moving toward it when a loud crash echoed through the barn, followed by angry voices and the unmistakable sound of Thunderbolt's distressed whinny. "Damn it! He kicked over the equipment. Get the rope around his neck. We'll do this the hard way." Elena abandoned caution. Thunderbolt was in danger, and waiting for help was no longer an option. She grabbed a pitchfork from a nearby stall and ran toward the commotion. The scene that greeted her was chaos. Thunderbolt was backed into a corner of his stall, ears pinned, eyes wild with fear. His injured leg was trembling with strain as he balanced defensively. Two men were attempting to corner him, one holding a rope with a crude slipknot, the other wielding what looked like a cattle prod. "Get away from him," Elena shouted, brandishing the pitchfork. "Security has been alerted. The police are on their way." The men spun toward her, momentarily startled. The older one recovered quickly, a dangerous smile spreading across his weathered face. "Well, well, if it isn't the do-gooder vet herself, convenient timing." He gestured to his partner. "Deal with her. I'll handle the horse." The younger man advanced toward Elena, but she stood her ground, pitchfork raised. "I said get away from him. That horse is under my legal protection." "Lady, you don't want to get hurt," the younger man warned. "This isn't personal. We're just doing a job." "Hurting an animal in my care is very personal," Elena replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "So is assaulting hospital staff." "Where's Bill?" "Taking a nap in his truck. He'll wake up with a headache, nothing more. Now be smart and step aside." Behind him, the older man had turned his attention back to Thunderbolt, who was becoming increasingly agitated. The stallion's eyes rolled white with fear, his breathing rapid and shallow. Elena could see the strain on his injured leg as he tried to maintain his defensive posture. "You're going to undo months of healing," she called to the older man. "That leg can't take this kind of stress yet." He ignored her, advancing on Thunderbolt with the rope. The stallion lunged defensively, nearly losing his balance as his injured leg faltered beneath him. In that moment, Elena made a decision. Dropping the pitchfork, she ducked past the younger man and ran directly to Thunderbolt's stall. Before either man could react, she was inside, positioning herself between them and the frightened horse. "Elena," a voice called from the barn entrance. Harrison and two security guards rushed in, alerted by the overnight monitoring system that had detected unusual activity. The two intruders, realizing they were outnumbered, made a break for the side exit. The security guards pursued them while Harrison hurried to Elena's side. "Are you all right? What happened?" "Blackwood's men," Elena explained breathlessly, turning her attention to Thunderbolt. The stallion was still agitated, but his posture relaxed slightly at the familiar sight of Elena and Harrison. They were trying to sedate him for transport. I think they hurt Bill. Security found him locked in the supply closet, unconscious but not seriously injured. They've called the police. Harrison examined Thunderbolt with a critical eye. How's his leg? Any damage? Elena ran her hands carefully over Thunderbolt's injured leg, relieved to find no obvious new damage. The brace protected it, thank goodness. But he's severely stressed. His heart rate is dangerously elevated. Together they worked to calm Thunderbolt, speaking in soothing tones and keeping movement slow and predictable. Gradually, the stallion's breathing steadied, though he remained wary, flinching at sudden sounds from outside. By dawn, the police had arrived and taken statements. The security guards had managed to catch the younger intruder, who quickly implicated Maxwell Blackwood when faced with serious charges. The older man had escaped, but his identity was known to police, who assured Elena they would locate him. "We need to move Thunderbolt immediately," Harrison decided as they watched the police cars depart. This attempt failed, but Blackwood might try again. Silver Creek is our best option, but we'll need to be careful about who knows the transfer details. Elena nodded in agreement, her hand resting protectively on Thunderbolt's neck. The stallion leaned into her touch, seeking comfort in her familiar presence. "We'll need to sedate him for transport," she said reluctantly. "After what just happened, he'll be too stressed otherwise, but I'm worried about the psychological setback. We've made so much progress with his trust." Harrison considered this. "What if you rode in the trailer with him? Your presence might keep him calm enough to manage with minimal sedation." The suggestion gave Elena pause. Transporting an injured, traumatized horse was risky under normal circumstances. Adding the stress of an attempted theft and the presence of a human in the trailer increased those risks significantly. Yet the alternative, heavy sedation after the night's trauma, could undermine months of trust building. "I'll do it," she decided. "We've come too far to take steps backward now. Thunderbolt and I have a connection. I think he'll trust me enough to stay calm during the move." Harrison looked skeptical but nodded. "I'll arrange for a larger transport with a separate compartment where you can safely ride along. And Elena, what you did tonight was incredibly brave and incredibly foolish. Those men could have seriously hurt you." Elena smiled wryly. "Sometimes foolish and brave look a lot alike. Besides, I made a promise to Thunderbolt the day I took him from that rodeo. I intend to keep it." The specialized transport arrived at Brightwood 2 hours later, a state-of-the-art trailer with a separate compartment where Elena could safely accompany Thunderbolt without risking injury if he became agitated. The hospital staff had worked quickly to prepare for an immediate departure, aware that Blackwood might make another attempt once he learned his men had failed. "We're taking a different route than originally planned," Harrison informed Elena as they prepared Thunderbolt for the journey. "And only you, me, and the driver know our actual destination." Elena nodded, understanding the precaution. "Has there been any word on the man who escaped?" "Police are still searching, but nothing yet. They've issued a warrant for Blackwood as well, on charges of conspiracy and attempted theft. He won't be showing his face around here anytime soon." Despite the reassurance, Elena knew Maxwell Blackwood wasn't a man who accepted defeat easily. She focused on Thunderbolt, administering just enough sedative to take the edge off his anxiety without fully sedating him. The stallion's trust in her had grown enormously, but after the night's trauma, he was understandably tense. "It's going to be okay," she murmured, stroking his neck as the medication began to take effect. "We're going somewhere safe, somewhere beautiful. No more bad men, no more fear." Loading him into the trailer was a delicate operation. His injured leg, while healing well, still required careful handling. With gentle guidance and constant reassurance, Elena and the hospital staff managed to get Thunderbolt settled. The stallion's eyes remained fixed on Elena, as if ensuring she wouldn't disappear. "I'm coming with you," she assured him, as if he understood every word. "I'll be right there the whole time." Once Thunderbolt was secure, Elena climbed into the adjacent compartment, a small space equipped with a seat and a window that allowed her to maintain visual contact with him. The barrier between them was solid enough for safety, but designed to allow him to see and smell her presence. As the trailer began to move, Thunderbolt shifted nervously, his ears flicking back and forth at the familiar sensation of transport. Elena kept talking to him in a calm, steady voice, reminding him of her presence. Gradually, his anxiety eased. Though alert, he wasn't showing the panic that might have been expected after his ordeal. The journey to Silver Creek took nearly 3 hours, winding through back roads to avoid being followed. Elena used the time to reflect on how far they'd come since that fateful day at the rodeo. Thunderbolt had transformed from a frightened, aggressive animal facing euthanasia to a healing, increasingly gentle creature showing remarkable intelligence and adaptability. And she had changed too, taking risks she would never have considered before, fighting institutional barriers and powerful enemies to protect an animal that many would have written off as beyond saving. When they finally arrived at Silver Creek, Elena was struck by the beauty of the place. Nestled in a secluded valley surrounded by gentle hills, the facility had the look of a well-maintained ranch rather than a medical institution. Expansive pastures stretched in every direction, cross-fenced into areas of various sizes to accommodate different rehabilitation needs. The main barn was a handsome structure with wide aisles and spacious stalls designed for long-term recovery patients. The facility director, Dr. Maya Patel, greeted them as the trailer came to a stop. "Welcome to Silver Creek, Dr. Ramirez. We've prepared everything according to Dr. Walsh's specifications." Elena had worked with Maya before, but never at this facility. "Thank you for accommodating us on such short notice." "Any friend of Harrison's is a friend of mine," Maya replied with a warm smile. "Besides, I've been following Thunderbolt's case with interest. What you've accomplished with his rehabilitation is remarkable." As they unloaded Thunderbolt, Elena was pleased to see how well he handled the transition. Though cautious of his new surroundings, he remained calm, staying close to Elena as they led him to his new stall, a corner space with extra padding and a small attached paddock where he could enjoy fresh air when he was ready. "He'll have round-the-clock monitoring," Maya explained, showing Elena the security features that had been enhanced following the events at Brightwood. "We've added cameras covering every angle of his stall and the surrounding areas. The property itself has a gated entrance with key code access, and our night security has been doubled." Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since Jake's warning, she believed Thunderbolt was truly safe. "This is perfect, Maya. Thank you." "There's one more thing," Maya added, leading Elena to a small cottage a short distance from the main facility. "Harrison thought you might want to stay on site, at least initially. This is our visiting specialist accommodation. It's yours for as long as needed." The cottage was simple but comfortable. A bedroom, small living area, kitchenette, and bathroom. Large windows overlooked the pastures, offering a view of the barn where Thunderbolt was housed. "This is incredibly generous," Elena said, touched by the thoughtfulness. "I was planning to commute from my apartment, but being here would make everything easier." "It's settled then," Maya smiled. "I'll let you get settled while we finish Thunderbolt's intake assessment. Dr. Walsh mentioned you'd want to oversee his evening therapy session yourself." Left alone, Elena took a moment to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. The attempted theft, the confrontation, the hasty relocation, it was overwhelming. Yet beneath the stress and exhaustion, she felt a growing certainty that they had turned a corner. Thunderbolt was safe now, with the best possible environment for his continued recovery. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Harrison. "Just checking that you arrived safely," he said when she answered. "How's our patient handling the change?" "Better than expected," Elena replied. "This place is perfect, Harrison. I can't thank you enough for arranging it." "Don't thank me yet," Harrison cautioned, his tone shifting. "I've just received word that Blackwood's attorney has filed an emergency motion claiming we've illegally removed his property to hide it from the court. He's demanding Thunderbolt's immediate return, pending resolution of the ownership dispute." Elena's momentary peace evaporated. He can't be serious. After his men assaulted our security guard and tried to steal Thunderbolt, surely the judge will see through this. Our attorney is filing a counter motion right now, including the police report from last night's incident. But Blackwood has resources and connections. We need to be prepared for a legal battle. Elena sank onto the cottage's small sofa, suddenly exhausted. What do we do now? For the moment, nothing changes. Thunderbolt stays at Silver Creek, continuing his rehabilitation under your supervision. Our attorney believes we have a strong case, especially with the criminal charges pending against Blackwood. But she wants to be prepared for all possibilities. After ending the call, Elena walked to the window, gazing out at the peaceful landscape. In the distance, she could see the barn where Thunderbolt was settling into his new temporary home. The contrast between the tranquil setting and the turbulent circumstances couldn't have been more stark. Yet despite the renewed threat, Elena felt a strange calm settling over her. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or perhaps it was the conviction that had been growing within her since the moment she'd first seen Thunderbolt injured in that rodeo arena. The belief that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Blackwood might have money and influence, but Elena had something stronger, the truth about who Thunderbolt really was and what he could become if given the chance. And she was determined that the world would see it too. 6 months passed at Silver Creek, bringing profound changes for both Thunderbolt and Elena. The legal battle with Maxwell Blackwood had proven less formidable than anticipated. The criminal charges against him for the attempted theft had significantly weakened his position in the civil case. When video evidence emerged of him explicitly abandoning Thunderbolt after the injury, instructing his men to get rid of that worthless animal, his ownership claim collapsed entirely. The judge not only dismissed his case but also issued a restraining order preventing Blackwood from approaching within a mile of any facility housing Thunderbolt. Freedom from legal threats allowed Elena to focus entirely on Thunderbolt's rehabilitation. His physical recovery had progressed remarkably well. The surgical repair had healed cleanly, and though he would always have a slight irregularity in his gait, he now moved with growing confidence and strength. The specialized hydrotherapy at Silver Creek had built muscle without stressing the healing bone, while carefully designed walking exercises had restored much of his natural movement. But it was Thunderbolt's psychological transformation that truly astonished everyone who knew his history. The defensive, fearful animal that had arrived at Brightwood half a year ago had evolved into a calm, curious horse who actively sought human interaction. His intelligence, always evident to Elena, now blossomed in an environment where learning was rewarded rather than forced compliance. "I've never seen anything like it," Maya commented one afternoon as they watched Thunderbolt in the training ring with Kara, Silver Creek's equine therapy specialist. The stallion was learning to respond to subtle cues, moving in perfect sync with Kara's body language. Most horses with his background never fully recover from the psychological trauma. They remain defensive, unpredictable. Thunderbolt was never broken, Elena replied, a theory she had developed over months of working with him. He played the role of the bronc because that's what was expected of him, but it wasn't his true nature. Given the right environment, his authentic self emerged. The therapy program had begun cautiously, with Thunderbolt first interacting with experienced handlers, then carefully selected adult clients. His sensitivity to human emotions made him uniquely suited for trauma survivors, particularly veterans with PTSD. There was something about his story, his journey from a performance animal valued only for aggression to a healing partner, that resonated deeply with people struggling to redefine themselves after trauma. Today marked a significant milestone, Thunderbolt's first session with a child participant. Emma, a 10-year-old girl who had stopped speaking after a car accident that took her mother's life, stood quietly beside Kara in the center of the ring. Thunderbolt approached them slowly, his ears forward with interest but his manner gentle and non-threatening. "Remember what we practiced, Emma," Kara said softly. "Hold your hand out flat, palm up, and let him come to you." Emma extended her small hand, her expression a mixture of fear and fascination. Thunderbolt lowered his head, his nostrils flaring as he took in her scent. Then, with exquisite gentleness, he touched his muzzle to her palm. A tiny smile flickered across Emma's face, the first anyone had seen since the accident. She didn't speak, but her hand moved tentatively to stroke Thunderbolt's cheek. The stallion remained perfectly still, as if understanding the fragility of this moment. Elena felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "Who would have thought," she whispered to Maya, "that the feared bronc of Blackwood Ranch would become a healer?" The session continued with Emma gradually growing more comfortable around Thunderbolt. She brushed his coat under Kara's guidance, led him in a small circle, and finally stood beside him with her arms wrapped as far as they could reach around his neck, her face pressed against his warm shoulder. "Thank you," Emma's father said afterward, his voice breaking with emotion as he spoke to Elena. "The therapists have been trying for months to reach her. This is the first time she's shown any real connection to anything." "Thunderbolt deserves the credit," Elena replied. "He has a gift for understanding exactly what each person needs from him." As the therapy program progressed, word spread about the remarkable stallion and his equally remarkable story. A documentary filmmaker approached Brightwood with interest in featuring Thunderbolt as part of a series on animal rehabilitation and therapy. The hospital board, recognizing the potential for positive publicity and increased funding for their therapy programs, readily agreed. The filming process introduced new challenges for Thunderbolt, but like everything else in his new life, he adapted with surprising ease. The presence of cameras and crew initially made him nervous, but Elena's constant reassurance helped him adjust. He seemed to understand somehow that his story might help other animals, that by allowing these humans to document his journey, he was contributing to something larger than himself. One crisp autumn morning, nearly a year after the rodeo accident, Elena stood at the fence of Thunderbolt's paddock, watching him graze peacefully in the golden light. His coat gleamed with health, and though the surgical scar remained visible on his leg, he moved with a fluid grace that belied his injury. Harrison joined her, leaning against the fence with a contented sigh. "The board just approved the permanent expansion of the therapy program," he announced. "Thunderbolt's success has opened doors we never thought possible. We've received 3 major grants specifically referencing his case as inspiration." Elena smiled. "He's certainly earned his retirement from the rodeo circuit." "Speaking of careers," Harrison continued, "I've been meaning to discuss something with you. The director position for the therapy program is opening up. Maya thinks you'd be perfect for it." Elena looked at him in surprise. "Me? But my specialty is surgical reconstruction, not therapy." "Your specialty, Dr. Ramirez, is seeing potential where others see only limitations." Harrison gestured toward Thunderbolt. "You took a chance on a horse that everyone else had written off, and in doing so, discovered not just a new path for him, but apparently for yourself as well. I've watched you this past year. You've never been more engaged or fulfilled than when working with Thunderbolt and the therapy clients." Elena considered his words, realizing the truth in them. Her surgical work had always brought satisfaction, but the deeper healing she'd witnessed through Thunderbolt's therapy work touched something profound in her spirit. "I'll think about it," she promised. Later that day, Elena brought Thunderbolt out for their daily walk around the property, a ritual that had become precious to both of them. As they crested a small hill overlooking the valley, she stopped to take in the view. Thunderbolt stood beside her, his presence solid and comforting. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said, stroking his neck. "From that terrified, injured horse in the rodeo trailer to this, a new purpose, a new life for both of us." Thunderbolt turned his head to look at her, his dark eyes reflecting intelligence and what Elena could only interpret as contentment. He nudged her shoulder gently, a gesture that had become his way of showing affection. In that moment, standing on the hillside with the horse that had changed the course of her life, Elena felt a perfect certainty about the path ahead. From a split-second decision at a rodeo to this peaceful valley, their journey together had only just begun. The broken leg that might have ended Thunderbolt's life had instead revealed his true destiny, and perhaps hers as well. Sometimes, Elena reflected as they turned back toward the barn, the greatest gifts come disguised as catastrophes. It takes courage to see beyond the immediate crisis to the potential that lies hidden within. For Thunderbolt, for herself, and for the countless lives they would touch through their work together, that courage had made all the difference.